So the Lord dropped something on me. I was thinking, that I wrote a little poem, and I hope that you like it. It says, I'm a singer. Oh, and by the way, these shirts, see the Kids Lebanon shirts? I told them I'd model it tonight. So if you want to get one of these, see Miss Jenny Bazin, a little blue tie-dyed going on for you. So they're pretty sweet. But we've already basically sold, I think, every one that we ordered. But no fret. If you want one, just see her or myself after the service, and we'll write your name down, and we'll make sure that you get one. So, I'm a singer, a model, and preacher. I was a sinner, now I'm a saint. Was on my way to hell, now I ain't. I found the narrow way. Those who find it are few. See me after the service, and I'll tell you how you can go too. So, if you're lost and you need to know Jesus, that's exactly why we are here tonight. So, I want to talk to you tonight. Real quick, I'm going to try to get you out of here a lot earlier than Mac does. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 37, if you have your Bibles. And I'm going to give you the Cliff Note version tonight, honestly, because it is very long. It covers about 10 chapters, and we're going to hit some of the highlights in the next few chapters in some verses, so stay with me. But I want to talk to you tonight about Joseph in the Old Testament. Maybe you've heard of him, maybe you haven't. But Joseph was the son of Jacob and Rachel, and he lived in Canaan with 10 half-brothers. He had a full brother named Benjamin and a half-sister that we really don't hear about. But he came from a big family, and God had just impressed upon me a couple weeks ago. I just couldn't get this Joseph thing out of my mind. And I knew that all the other guys were going to Arkansas, and I was going to be here. So I think God started preparing this a few weeks back. But we live in this generation that I call the selfie generation. And, a lot of us in here have been guilty of it, myself included probably. But here's the problem with the selfie generation. They're seeking bad attention from friends, strangers, the opposite sex. They're just wanting to be needed and wanted, I think, and they're doing it in a bad way. We're doing it in a bad way. You've seen them. Every time you pop up on social media, you've got that friend that's kind of in your face with a selfie, and some of them are ridiculous. It's they got things poked out and popped out, and they're asking us what they should wear. Something. You should wear something. Just put something on. But what is that? They just want attention. And listen, I'm not just talking about single people. And I'm not just talking about women. I'm talking about men too. And unfortunately, I'm not talking about people tonight who are worldly. I'm talking about single people. I'm talking about married people. I'm talking about Christian people who are doing these things. And, if you know tonight, if you are, and why you're doing it. Now, I'm not making a judgment of everybody. I'm just saying from things I see on the internet, social media, Instagram, these things that we use as a tool to reach people with the gospel of Jesus Christ can also be used to break up marriages and split families apart and get people in situations that they wish they'd have never gotten themselves into. So we need to be careful of those things in that selfie generation. Here's another problem with the selfie generation. We've slipped into this mentality that it's all about me. It's about me. It don't matter if you're in a family. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're or male or female. It's about me. It's about me being happy. God wants me happy. The devil has fed that lie, and people have taken that lie. There's nowhere in the Bible where God says that He wants your life to be happy. And we're seeking happiness in all the wrong places with all the wrong people tonight. That's the problem with the selfie generation. So what does God think about it? That's what we need to be concerned about. Here's what God cares about. He cares about the inside, not so much the outside. We were created in His image. Now, you can throw these selfies out there all day long, and you can get all the likes you want. But here's what people are looking at: the outside. They're judging the outside, and they don't care about the inside. I had a friend one time tell me a couple years ago, there's a guy, and he was single, and he said, Brad, if you see a girl and she's a 10, she's ugly on the inside. So, and that's not true for everything, but listen, there's more to it than just the looks. Because we all know tonight that the wrinkles will come, and the gray will come, or it'll fall slam out, you know. Either way, things change, right? But what doesn't change is that spirit that is within us that God has placed there. So if you've married tonight just on looks and vanity, you're going to be unhappy at some point. But if you've married because you liked what you saw on the inside, then that'll last. So God cares about the inside. Beauty, self-worth, and purpose come from the inside out, not the outside in. Those are things that we need to be working on. God is in the business of getting the glory. That's what He wants. That's what He's going to get. It's all about Him. It's all about His forgiveness. It's all about the redemption story. That's it. Jesus said, I've come to seek and save that which is lost. We know that the Bible says that there was nothing about Jesus, of His appearance, that made people say, wow, you know, He's a looker. He was just a common, ordinary man who was about His Father's business. So that's what we want to look at tonight. Let's take a Cliff Note journey into Joseph's life. It spans about 10 chapters, so I'm going to try to do it short and sweet. Even my mom asked me tonight, was I going to be short? That's sad, y'all. She's ready to go. And listen, it's Shark Week, so I know I ain't keeping y'all too late. All right, so let's read Genesis chapter 37. Starts here with Joseph's dream. It says, Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings, in the land of Canaan. And these are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now don't get confused. Israel and Jacob are the same. So when you see Israel, it refers to Jacob. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was a son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that the father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. And he said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. And then he dreamed another dream, and he told it to his brothers and said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. And behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the sayings in mind. So we're looking at Joseph tonight. There's three things that we note right off the bat. One, he's 17 years old, so he's a teenager. And he's working for his dad, with his dad. He's a shepherd. Three things. his brothers hated him because of the report that he gave against his brothers. 2, because Jacob favored him. Now we know that there's a lot of people in here tonight who have children, right? And you know if you've got at least 2 children in the home, then you've got at least 2 different personalities. I've got 2 boys, and they're alike in a lot of ways, and then they're not alike in a lot of ways. They act like their mother a lot, and they look like her too. But they're different, right? They have different personalities. One can be better than the other at any given time. So it would be easy to favor the child that's better. But God speaks about favoritism in the New Testament. He says, listen, don't do it. I don't favor anyone. It causes trouble. And we see here early on in Genesis, and we're not even going to get off on this side note, but there was favoritism already involved in this family. And it caused the brothers to hate their brother even more. So they hated him because of what he had told his dad. They hated him because Jacob favored him. And because of the dreams that he had to explain to them that basically they were going to end up bowing down before him. Now, we could see early on how that could be a problem. And listen, don't forget the fact that these are just not characters that we're talking about tonight. These were real people. This was a real family. So please, when you're thinking about this and we're reading about this, there were real emotions involved in here. There was anger. There could be pride at any given time. There's all these different things that these people were feeling and doing. So we don't want to neglect those things as we read tonight. So the 2 dreams infuriated the brothers to the point of them wanting to kill him. So tonight, be careful, because you can become so jealous and so envious of someone around you that you start to despise that person. And the Bible talks about it in Matthew 5:21 and 22 that, listen, you don't have to go out and commit murder. If you've thought ill will in your heart, if you've hated your brother, if you are upset with someone else to that point, then you have committed murder in your heart according to God. And maybe we've been there before. Maybe we looked around and we had a family member or a friend that just seemed everything they touched turned to gold. And they had so many things, and here we don't have as many things. And envy and jealousy comes into play. And before you know it, bitterness takes root. And it just takes a hold of who you are and changes who you are. And you just lose sight of the good things in your life, and you're focusing on the wrong things. So if that is you tonight, if there's somebody in your life that you just cannot stand, you need to get that right. I need to get that right, because the Bible says that we should be at peace with all men as much as possible. So, but here's the thing about blessings and God putting people in positions to do things. One, the people that are upset, jealous, envious, don't understand the responsibility that comes with that position. There's a lot that goes on that people do not see. We focus on the little tidbits that we get here and there, and then we try to put a puzzle together from the little things we know of someone, and we have no idea what they go through. I'm going to use Pastor Mac tonight because he's not here, and if y'all are taping this, you can edit this out because I can say that I never said it, but you know as well as I know that he is a busy man, extremely busy, probably too busy for one individual, and I am the blessed one that handles his schedule. So, and maybe you're in here tonight and you've tried to get in touch with him through me, and a day's gone by to a week, weeks. Please understand that you're not being put off. He's just that busy, good or bad. That's the way it is. But he's in a position, not only here, but with his family business, to where it requires a lot of him. And please understand tonight that God has, and I get it, You know, Mac, I love him to death. He's like my BFF. But there's other people here that can certainly help you and handle things too, that are very capable of doing those things. And that's why we're here, you know, to help in any way that we can, to try to take some of the load off of him and let him do what he wants to. Listen, if he comes on Sundays and Wednesdays and brings it like he does, I'm good with that. I'll help that man all I can, because that's the anointing on his life is to do that. So I understand that, the position he's in. But then also people don't understand that positions aren't a status of power, but they're platforms to serve other people. So it's not a power trip to be in a certain position, because there's a lot of servanthood that comes along with that if we're doing our job right, if you're doing your job right. But there's always going to be haters, right? You're just going to have to deal with it. But it's an unfortunate situation. So Reuben should have been the older brother in the case. He should have gotten the coat of many colors, or the special coat, because he was actually the older of the two. So Reuben was Jacob's son with Leah. Leah was the sister of Rachel. Stick with me. I probably need to draw this out, but who was Rachel? That was Joseph's mother, right? All right. Who was his stepbrother, Reuben? Who was his mom? Leah. Are you putting the pieces of the puzzle together yet? Guess who Jacob was married to? Leah and Rachel. He was married to sisters. So I know it sounds like the young and the restless right now. But he was, listen, we don't have time to go back and look at it, but look, Jacob was tricked by their father. He married one thinking he was getting the other, and he had to wait 7 years, I believe, for the other. So he ended up marrying two. He really wanted Rachel, but he got Leah in the beginning. And the Bible basically says that Leah wasn't that pretty, if you look at it, back in Genesis. But Rachel was a knockout. So Jacob wanted Rachel, but he ended up getting both. So if anybody, I know I don't want to, anybody watch the young, don't even answer that. Don't even answer that. So if anybody should have been upset for Joseph's position, it should have been Reuben. But if you read, Reuben is actually the one who spoke with his brothers when they were ready to kill him. They were going to kill him because of these things. And Reuben said, hey, hold on a minute. Let's don't do this. And basically what they did is they took Joseph and they threw him in a pit. And they took that special robe that he had and they dipped it in goat's blood that they sacrificed. And then they sent it back. They took it back to their father, Jacob, and said that basically Joseph died because of a wild animal. So there's all kind of trickery and lies here that are going on. But the long story short, they basically go back and tell their dad that his favorite son is now dead. So here's the second point. You may think a lot of people just love you, they like you, but let me tell you tonight, there'll be people that'll grin in your face, smile at you, act like they love you to death, and they can't stand you. That is a part of probably everybody's life. So listen, when that comes to be and you find that out, please don't let that make you drop out of church. That's not a God thing. That's a man thing. I hear so many people say that they were just bitten by church, that they were jaded, that these things happen, and now they've fallen out. And listen, it's not God's fault. It's not. He's not in that. So if we get our eyes so focused on men or women that are in the church, and then they come back to bite us, and then we get upset and we fall out, that is not of God. So there's a lot of people sitting on couches tonight that have gone through that very thing that aren't in church tonight, and that's unfortunate. So they'll act like they love you and support you. Listen, your own family can turn on you. Pastor Mac, I think, said Sunday that you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And there may be some people in here tonight who have been burnt by family. And you're not speaking tonight because of things that happened in your family. And that's unfortunate. I'm fortunate enough to come from a family to where I've never really dealt with that. My brother and I are very close. I don't think my parents ever showed any favoritism at all. And we're a product of that today. We never fight or argue over anything. I love him and would do anything for him, and he would do the same. But there are family, there are friends that'll turn. And it's unfortunate, but don't let that make you fall out of church. Don't let that make you upset and turn your back on a God who loves you and died for you tonight. I looked it up the other day that Facebook's a funny thing. I've got like over 2,200 friends, but I don't have 2,200 friends. I've got just a handful at most. I keep my circle very tight because of things. I've been hurt just like you have. I've had things get back to me that were said from people that I never thought would say things about me like that. And it hurts, when you respect and you love that person. But you got to keep going. So anyway, meanwhile, Joseph is sold to Potiphar in Egypt. Let's go over to Genesis 39 real quick. And I will read to you verses 2 through 6, or 1 through 6. It says, Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. The Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. His master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and attended him, and made him overseer of his house, and put him in charge of all that he had. From the time that he made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in his house and his field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him he had no concern about anything but the food he ate. So all this stuff's going on. Can you kind of see what God's doing here? He's working on something. There's a bigger picture in Joseph's life. There's a bigger plan. It's not about you, and it's not about me. But anytime God starts to bless, the devil is right around the corner. Can I get an amen? All right. Go down to verse 21 through 23, and let's read. This is basically right after Pharaoh sets Joseph up over everything. He says, listen, you got it all. You take care of it. I trust you. I can see that the Lord's hand's on you. He's blessing everything you do, so I'm going to let you do it. And then right in verse 21 it says, But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever was done there, he was the one who did it. The keeper of the prison paid no attention to anything that was in Joseph's charge because the Lord was with him. And whatever he did, the Lord made it succeed. Wait a minute. He was just in Pharaoh's home over all that he had. And now he's in prison? Well, there was a lady, Potiphar's wife, that comes on the scene right after all this blessing takes place. And the Bible says that Joseph was a handsome man. And he was over all of Potiphar's home, except his wife. And she basically wanted to have relations with Joseph. That's the easiest way for me to say it. It's relations. And, there's a verse in the New Testament, I believe, that it says, resist the devil and she must flee. or it may say he will flee. Either way, you apply it to your life. But that's exactly what Joseph did, was resist the devil. And here's what happened. He had on another coat. She grabs the coat as he runs out of the house to get away from her. And she basically goes to Pharaoh and the servants, or Potiphar, and says, listen, this man just raped me, and here's the proof. And Potiphar was steaming mad and believed his wife, and basically just threw him in prison. So he goes from ultimate high to an ultimate low immediately. So all these things are happening to his life. So here's the recap. Joseph is hated by his brothers. He's sold into slavery. He's blessed by Potiphar. He's lied on by Potiphar's wife, and now he's in prison. So you ask, how could God allow such things to happen to a godly person? It's simple. There's a bigger plan. It's not about you. It's not about Joseph. It's not about me. But hang on. It gets worse. So here he is in prison now, and some things happen. This is where we're cutting it short. Well, there is a baker, and there's a cupbearer to Pharaoh and Potiphar. Well, they did something to make the king mad, and he throws both of them into jail. Well, guess who they get assigned to? Because we just read that the jailer there basically set Joseph up over the jail. So Mr. Harry, he's running to jail, kind of like you do. And you can relate to this, and we can because of the testimonies we see. So here it is, a godly man is now in jail, and he's done absolutely nothing wrong. So why would God do that? Because there's a bigger plan. Well, these two guys are there, and they have a dream one night. And they can't interpret the dream. And listen, if you know anything about the Old Testament, they were big on dreams and interpreting dreams. So they wanted to know what the dream meant. So they go to Joseph, he's a godly man, and they say, listen, can you interpret the dream? So they tell him the dream, and Joseph says to the cupbearer, yes, in 3 days you will be restored to your position. And Joseph asked him this, when you go back to Potiphar's house, I want you to mention to him my name. Please remember me when you get out of here. Basically, he wanted a ticket out of prison. And the guy was like, yep, I'll do it. So then he looks at the other guy, the baker comes up, and he's all excited because now he's heard that the cupbearer is going to be out in 3 days, and he's going to be restored back to his old position. So he says, hey, Joseph, how about tell me what my dream means? And he says, well, in 3 days they're going to hang you, and the birds of the air are going to eat your flesh. That was a wah, wah, wah kind of moment, and guess what happened? They hung him. And guess what else happened? The cupbearer was restored to his position. And guess what else happened? He forgot Joseph. For 2 years, he stayed in prison. What? A godly man who's done no wrong is now in prison for 2 more years. How would you feel? Just be honest. How would you feel? God's taking care of him, right? He's running to jail, but he's still in prison. He's still got to live there. He's got to stay there. I mean, would you feel mad? Hurt? Hopeless? Forgotten? I mean, 2 years. We're not talking a few days. That's a long time for 2 years. Would you start asking questions? I would. I'd want to know why. And God's answer would be this simple. It's not about you. There's a bigger plan. There's a bigger picture while Joseph is there. Think about this. Now, I know a lot of times we discredit the jailhouse confessions and the religious thing and all, but listen, there are men and women that are incarcerated today who have given their hearts and their lives to Jesus Christ because they've hit rock bottom. If there is no Harry Gordon, if there is no Brian Spring, if there is no whoever that's helping them that goes to these places and tells them about the love of Jesus Christ in probably the most hopeless situation that you can think of tonight, they don't get saved. So think about, in the bigger picture, in God's plan, of how many people Joseph was able to speak with and witness to for 2 years. Now, did he like it? Did he wake up every morning singing Amazing Grace? I doubt it. But the Bible didn't record any complainings here. So all we know up to this point is Joseph is faithful to the faithful one. And I believe that's one of the key reasons that God kept blessing. Listen, any of us at any time can throw in the white flag and say, we're done. I'm giving up. This ain't worth it. How many of you has been saved in here recently, and once you got saved, all hell broke loose in your life? That's exactly when it's going to happen. Why does that happen like that? Because the devil is trying to discourage you, who is young in your faith, to quit, to give up, to turn back before you see the real blessings that God has in your life. Joseph could have quit. He said, you know what, I've had enough of this. But he wouldn't see what he would see in the end. So we'd be upset. We'd be asking questions. 2 years later, Pharaoh has a dream, and nobody can interpret the dream. And then the cupbearer, is relieved of his amnesia, and he goes, oh, wait a minute. There's a guy who was in prison who had interpreted my dream, and he can interpret your dream. So Pharaoh was, go get him. So they bring him in to interpret the dream, and that's exactly what he does. So now he's back before Pharaoh again, and this is Joseph's response in Genesis 41:16. Genesis 41:16. He says, Pharaoh, it is not in me. It's not me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. So he's faithful to the witness. The whole time, Joseph realizes that the blessings that are taking place in these terrible situations is God's hand on him. And he even lets Pharaoh know this. And listen, these people that Joseph's around, they see what's happening, but they're not believers. They don't believe in Jesus Christ. They didn't believe in the God that Joseph believed in. So he's witnessing to all these people. So the dream was this. Pharaoh, there's going to be 7 years of abundance. But then there's going to be 7 years of famine. So in Genesis 41, Joseph is set in charge again. And he gathers for 7 years all the abundance. And in those 7 years, he meets a woman. And he has 2 sons. Things are starting to look up for Joseph again. But listen, if you're like me, you're just wondering when the next bad thing is coming around the corner. If you're here tonight and you're always worried about the worst thing that can happen, you're going to live a miserable life. If you're always focused on what can happen next that's negative, you're going to have a miserable life. You have got to learn how to focus on the goodness of God. Yeah, there's going to be negativity. Yeah, there's going to be things that are going to happen that aren't going to seem like God's anywhere in it. But listen, don't throw out the 99 good for the one bad. Are you in this thing for the long haul? That's what Pastor Mac just talked about. It's longevity. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint race. You got to finish the race. If you start a race and you don't finish across the finish line, you didn't run the race. You were disqualified. You don't get it. So you can't quit. Listen, when things don't go our way, you don't quit. That's one of the things I've taught my kids, because I was taught from my parents at a young age is, listen, if you start something, you finish it. You don't quit. It don't matter if you can't stand it or I can't stand it. My kids wanted to play soccer, and I'm not offending people who love soccer, because it's huge right now. And if they signed some of the contracts that some of these guys are signing, I'd probably love soccer. But when they were wanting to play soccer, I couldn't stand soccer. But I went as a parent and supported it, And when they got into it, whether they liked it or not, you're going to finish it out. And whether I liked it or not, I'm going to finish it with you. So we've got too many people today, whether it be whatever, if things don't work out the way we thought they should, we just quit. We think we'll just start over, forget whatever it is. That marriage didn't work out, so what? Well, guess what? You got kids involved in that marriage that you just quit on, And I'm not saying that for every marriage that's ever fallen apart. That's not the case. But there are some people that just said, you know what, this ain't what I signed up for, so I'm quitting. There was no fight there. There's got to be some fight there. So there's 7 years of abundance, and there's 7 years of famine. Well, he has these two sons. Listen to what he names them. Manasseh, his first son. This is what that name means. God has made me forget all my hardships and all my father's house. So all that bitterness that he could have taken, all that anger that he could have had towards his brothers, he's now said, you know what, God's blessed me with a son, and I forget it. You're here tonight, and you're holding on to something that was done to you. You need to forget it. You need to let it go. God says that he cannot forgive you if you are not willing to forgive someone else. I don't care what it is. And I know that's hard and that's easy to say. But whatever it is tonight that you're holding on to that's blocking God from blessing you again and forgiving you the way he wants to, you got to let it go. You got to forgive. I've got to forgive. Can we forget? I wish I could. I really wish I could just wipe it from my mind the way God can. But there will be times that we remember. But you still got to forgive. You got to move on. You can't continue to live in the anger and the bitterness and the past. God has called you to move forward, to let it go and leave it behind. He'll bless it. So, and then the second son is Ephraim. For God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. So you see what's happening now? Joseph is having a big picture moment. He's realizing, you know what? Yeah, I have been through some pretty bad stuff. But God's hand is still on me. He's still blessing. So meanwhile, when the famine hits, it devastates the land. 2 years in to the 7-year famine, Jacob sends his sons, all but Benjamin, to go into Egypt to buy food so they don't die. And the long story short, Joseph realizes when the brothers come in, because remember, Joseph is set up over all that stuff. So anything that's bought or sold goes through him. So his brothers come in, and Joseph realizes, hey, that's my brothers. They were his stepbrothers. Benjamin, if you go back and look, is his really only true blood brother. All the others were half-brothers. But they come in, he realizes that it's them, but they don't realize that it's him. Remember, they sold him into slavery. They have no idea where Joseph is today. No clue. So he sees them, and he recognizes them. Well, he messes with them. He plays around with them a little bit. Maybe it's to get back a little bit. Maybe it's a jab at what they did to him, so many years ago. Now he's in his 30s. They did what they did to him when he was 17 years old. But jump over to Genesis 42. We're going to read this real quick. Genesis 42, 21 through 25. And then they said to one another, in truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, and that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them and said, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you didn't listen, so now there comes a reckoning for his blood. So they're sitting there talking in Hebrew, and they don't think that Joseph has any clue of what they're saying, but he hears and understands every word they say. And he leaves the room because he's upset, and he cries over that. And he comes back, and then he holds them for 3 days. And then in chapter 43, he says, listen, I want you to pack your bags, and I want you to go home. and I want you to go back, and I want you to get your younger brother that you say is with your father, and I want you to bring him back. Basically, what he was doing is he wanted to make sure that Benjamin was still alive, because this is his blood brother. And if they sold him out, they could have sold Benjamin out too, because technically he's not a blood brother to them either. So he says, you go back, you take the food, take it back, but I want you to come back with your brother, and we'll square things up. So while they're gone, they're coming back, and Joseph prepares a feast. Now this is where I'm just condensing everything for time. It's 8 o'clock. Genesis chapter 44, the brothers have their sacks filled with food and money. They return to their family. And the second time, they slip a silver cup in Benjamin's bag, because Benjamin came back with them. So now he's sending them back to their dad. But he slips a silver cup in there, and it looks like they stole it. And he puts it in Benjamin's bag. Well, they send them on their way. Then they send the servants after them. They bring them. They reveal to them somebody stole the silver cup. All these brothers are surprised because they know they didn't steal a silver cup, but they bring them back to Joseph anyway. And they're standing there before him. Well, Judah, the one that was ready to kill off Joseph in the beginning, is actually pleading now for them not to kill Benjamin, but he would take his place instead. So do you see how things are changing? Do you see over a period of time how hearts are changing? Judah went from a malice, callous stepbrother to now he's willing to take the place of another brother so he doesn't kill him. And Benjamin is not his blood brother. And then over in Genesis chapter 45, Joseph reveals himself in God's plan. So go to Genesis 45. I know, I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but it's just so much in it. Genesis 45, 4 through 8. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father of the Pharaoh, and the Lord of all his house, and the ruler over all the land of Egypt." So now it's all coming to fruition. Now the circles become the circle. Now they realize the whole time that it was Joseph. And Joseph now realizes the whole time, hey, now I see God sent me here to preserve and set me up in the place that I'm in through slavery, through your wrongdoing. Hey, don't worry about it anymore. Forget it, because God set it up. This is the way he wanted it done. And now I see why he did it, so I could save you in the end. Remember those 2 dreams that Joseph had in the beginning that infuriated his brothers? These were the dreams. They were bowing before their brother. They were pleading for their life now. And Joseph was merciful to him. And listen, there is a whole nother sermon in itself that applies to Joseph being a type of Christ in the Old Testament, and the things that he went through and the things that he's done. Simple things like they sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. How many did they sell Jesus for? 30, right? There's all kind of things there that are neat, that if you go back and study those things, you see it. So Genesis chapter 46, Joseph's family comes to Egypt, and they're saved. Jacob lives long enough to be reunited with his family, and he even meets his 2 new grandsons. So it's come full circle now. We see why they went through what he went through. So I say all that tonight to say this. It's not about you. God has a bigger plan. See, God made a promise to Abraham in Genesis 17:4, and he said this, "As for me, this is my covenant with you, that you will be the father of many nations. So God wasn't going to let Jacob and his family die because he made a promise. Why? Because he's a promise keeper. You've had people in your life that have broken promises, and now you don't trust anybody, but you can trust God because he's never broken a promise, and he won't. I said all that to say this. Sometimes your family will betray you. Sometimes friends will abandon you. Sometimes people will lie and actually want to destroy you. There's people in your life tonight that would love nothing more than to see you fall flat on your face and lose everything you got. And there's an enemy behind that attitude that says in John 10:10 that they come to kill, to steal, and destroy. So they're there. And when you question God, his answer will be, it's not about you. He has a bigger plan. People will get saved during that plan. People's hearts will return to the Lord during that plan. And God will bless others by using your life in the plan. I'm reminded of three things tonight. We'll close with this. First, Jeremiah 31:6, for I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to bless you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. That's a promise. Deuteronomy 31:6, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Whether it be prison or whether it be at the top of the mountain, God promises to be with us. And then the last one, my life verse. All things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So if you're here tonight and you've gone through some of these things that Joseph has gone through, there's hope. And I'm here tonight to tell you that you are part of a bigger plan. And you've just got to realize that you're being used by God to affect a lot of people. And it's not just about you.